Hello, and welcome to the No Wrong Notes podcast, a show hosted by me, Veronica Kokos, holistic voice teacher and singer just like you. Grab a cup of tea, relax, and sit back as we discuss all things singing technique, mindset tips, and more so you can show up as the most confident and creative singer you can be. Hey y'all, and welcome to another episode of No Wrong Notes. Today we're talking about the top 3 things that every beginner singer needs in order to improve their singing. We're talking practical things you'll need, as well as things that are a bit more abstract and mindset oriented. This episode was actually inspired by a YouTube video I made, I think a year or two ago. And as I was preparing to reshare it on here, I figured that it needed an update because while the info in the video is still useful, I think that I've learned more from my teaching in the time since I originally made that video and would like to share some new things that I think beginners singers need to improve their singing. And even though it's still summertime, we're in the beginning of August, I do think that this whole back to school energy seems to affect everybody. A lot of us are thinking about our goals or are thinking about learning new skills, and I figured that this episode would be great for those that are new to singing and looking to get started with their own vocal journey. But honestly, all of the skills that I'm about to talk about are useful for anyone, no matter what stage you're at as a singer. Now, let me preface all of this by saying that by no means are these the only 3 things that singers need to improve their skills. As with any information that you hear me talk about on this podcast, I cannot cover every single unique situation or touch upon every single nuance. In fact, if you're looking for guidance that is tailored to you, I recommend setting up either a trial lesson with me, which is linked in the show description, or signing up for my Curious Singer membership so that you can receive that guidance that is specifically for you. In the meantime, let's cover a few things that beginner singers will need in order to improve their singing skills. The first thing I'll share is that you'll need a clear idea of the what or who will help you as you work on improving your singing. What I mean by this is that while YouTube and social media are helpful resources for learning some things about the voice, if you really are serious about improving your singing, it's worth investing time, energy, and or financial resources in either a teacher. In fact, I have a whole podcast episode on how to find the best voice teacher for you, so you can check that out. Or investing in a program or membership that gives you some techniques that are tailored to you. And while working with a voice teacher one-on-one is super helpful, it's not always affordable, which is why so many teachers, myself included, but not just me, there's so many out there, you can see them on social media, are offering memberships and programs that help us share our knowledge with singers, but at a much more affordable rate. Group classes are another great option. However, even if that kind of program is out of reach for you, some cities, mostly mid-sized to larger cities, sometimes have nonprofit music schools that offer lessons at either a reduced rate or on scholarship. Like I said, I tend to see those kinds of music schools and community music schools in mid-size or larger cities. I think Washington, D.C. has one. So it may not be an option for you if you're located in a more rural area, but it's worth looking into all the same. So to recap, your first step is to figure out the who or what that will help you achieve your singing goals, whether that is a teacher or a membership program or course, group class, maybe even looking to see if your city offers lessons at a reduced or scholarship rate. Of course, it's not just enough to sign up for lessons or a program and call it a day if your main goal is to improve your singing. The second thing you'll need is a practice plan that you can be consistent with. I know that this is a super obvious tip. I've probably talked about it 50 million times on here and on Instagram and TikTok, but I've had singers come through my studio that don't practice, and honestly, that is totally okay if your main goal is just to have fun and or express yourself creatively through lessons. That is totally an option. Everyone has their own intentions when they sign up for lessons, and sometimes I just use my singing to process emotions that I'm dealing with no intention to improve or grow. But if your intention or goal is to see change, growth, and results when it comes to your singing, you'll want to have a practice routine that works on the skills that you're building in lessons. I literally just reshared the audio from a YouTube video on this topic in a previous episode. So if you're looking for specifics on how to create a practice routine that works for you, you'll definitely want to check that out. And like I said, using lessons as a way to creatively express yourself or using lessons as a way to heal is a wonderful thing. I have students in my studio that do this, and lessons are a great creative and healing space for them. And you definitely don't necessarily have to practice outside of lessons if your main goal for lessons is just to use that as a creative outlet. But if you're going into lessons with a mindset of, I want to grow and change when it comes to my singing, in that case, you'll definitely need a practice routine that helps you achieve that. The next things that I think are important for beginner singers to have when working on their voice is patience and compassion. Something that makes me sad is when beginner singers give up after a few lessons because they don't sound perfect, and they find themselves frustrated by the voice cracks that are a completely normal part of the learning process. And let me repeat that. Voice cracks are a normal part of the learning process when it comes to singing. I've experienced them. People I love and that I've worked with have experienced them. It's a completely normal part of the process. I like to think of voice cracks as like the check engine light in a car. They're an indicator that something else is going on and that experimentation is needed to figure out where the underlying problem is and how to fix it. Like I said, some beginner singers tend to get really frustrated with themselves in this process, which is totally understandable, and they end up giving up before they've given their voices a chance to experience something different. This is why I recommend that beginner singers be very kind and very patient with themselves when starting lessons or starting a program, since you're often learning new skills or undoing certain unsustainable habits. And like learning or unlearning any skill or habit, your brain needs time to process those changes, usually between 6 to 8 weeks, maybe even more than that. Keeping that in mind, it's worth being kind to yourself as you struggle and learn these new skills. Expecting perfection from yourself or speaking unkindly to yourself is one of the fastest ways to burn out. Speaking from experience there, which I certainly do not want for you. I want you to avoid the mistakes that I've made in the past. Aiming for perfectionism and burning yourself out is definitely not the way to go. Another thing I'll share that I think is important for beginner singers to have, and which is along similar lines as the patience and compassion that I was just encouraging, is to keep an open mind when working on your voice. An open mind can keep you receptive to the possibilities for your voice, especially when you find yourself struggling. But it's also important when it comes to the exercises and techniques you experiment with in lessons or in a membership program. This is because sometimes teachers will ask you to do some crazy exercises that may seem strange or weird at first. Trust me, there is a point to the crazy things that we do in lessons. And so-called weird exercises can be really transformative for your singing. Of course, if a teacher is asking you to do something that makes you feel unsafe or feels physically uncomfortable, let them know if you feel comfortable communicating that with them. And if you feel like you're in an environment where you can't communicate that with your teacher, you may want to take your money elsewhere, just being honest. I touch upon this a bit in the episode I did where I share how to find the best voice teacher for you, so be sure to go check that out and listen. Going back to my main point though, what I'm trying to say here is that it's worth it to keep an open mind when you're learning about your voice. Moving on to the last thing now that I think beginner singers should have, it's having a support system, even if that support system is one person or even your pet. You should have someone or something you can talk to about your singing, especially for the tougher moments where you find yourself struggling. Personally, I have a friend or two that I talk to about my singing, and it feels really good to vent about what I'm working on or get feedback on a recording of a song I made. And like I said, you don't need a huge support system, but it does help to have someone or something to turn to when you're struggling. Whether it's your best friend, your family, a significant other, or your pet, having someone or something outside of yourself to connect with can help you remember how worthy you are of achieving the goals that you set for yourself. All right, y'all. That is all I've got for this episode today. It's short and sweet, just like a lot of these episodes are, but hopefully you gained some insight. Hopefully it inspired you, no matter where you're at on your singing journey. Of course, I created this little list of things that I think beginner singers should have for beginner singers. But I think that all of these things are important to keep in mind no matter where you're at. If you're a professional singer, or you're kind of on an intermediate level, if you're just singing for fun, these are all good things to keep in mind every step of the way. Now, if you liked this episode, I would greatly, greatly appreciate it if you could leave a 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, or if you're watching this on YouTube or listening to this on YouTube, liking this video, subscribing. Totally appreciate that. It helps more people find out about this podcast. And of course, if you want to catch up with me, I'm also on social media. Those handles are in the show description for Instagram and TikTok. And in the meantime, happy singing, y'all.